right, guys, welcome back. Boots Come in Pairs. I'm back from the sunshine of Florida. We're back talking baseball, and pitchers and catchers have reported. I was thinking about it as going through my wardrobe. I don't have a single pitcher or catcher in my wardrobe. I don't know why I would. I think I have Bob Uecker, but that doesn't really count. So, but yeah, pitchers and catchers are back in. We've also seen some arm injuries already, which those kind of tend to creep up this time of year. No one of great significance. The Cubs, Assad, I think, is hurt already. But yeah, this first week of pitchers and catchers back in is always a little tricky because you're going to find out who's healthy, who's not. But one thing we did see was Shohei Ohtani was back on the mound already and throwing. We've kind of discussed that. Other than the stuff going on with him outside of baseball, he's probably the biggest name to return to pitching this year besides DeGrom. What do you think that's going to do to affect I would say his hitting? That's his biggest asset. We've discussed, does he need a pitch? But what are your first thoughts on that whole start?
I would say that I'm interested to see how the Dodgers use him. Is he going to be? There's been multiple things floated out there. Obviously, returning to his starting pitching role, pitching every 5 or 6 days, yada yada yada, or maybe putting him in a more like a high leverage situation, like closing, which they don't really need now that they signed Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, and they already have their stable of arms that anybody who can really close. They probably have 4 or 5 guys who can close. I think the biggest thing is going to be usage. How will they use him? And if the usage is up, how will that affect his hitting? I think if they're planning on starting him every 5 or 6 days, you're not going to see those same stats offensively. You're not going to see him stealing bases at the rate that he did. Yeah, it's the biggest thing. I mean, coming off of a major a season where you didn't pitch at all, just the usage. That'll be the thing that I watch.
Yeah, usage, and is he pitching in October? We make a lot of bold predictions. We'll say I don't think he's pitching even into August. I would be shocked. So that'll be interesting to see. Anything else from the first week? Verlander's in a Giants uniform. That's weird. I saw a picture of Kyle Hendricks in his Angels stuff. Weird. This is kind of when we get all that weird stuff out of the way, for sure.
Max Scherzer is in Canada. I mean, yeah. That's weird. I saw this. It was like a tweet or something like that, and it made too much sense. It's like you're seeing some of these guys get shuffled around at the end of their career, and it's kind of like when you create a franchise gets into the later depths, and somebody who's would be on 2 teams traditionally, he's on like 8 teams, and he's just trying to hold on for that one more year, maybe trying to get another ring. I don't know. It's kind of refreshing though at the same time. Yeah, it'll be cool to see. I mean, speaking of like guys like Verlander and Scherzer, it's like we're kind of getting to an end of an era here. They're kind of the last 2 guys from that previous era of pitchers, and they're freak athletes as well, and they're still throwing really hard. But it'll be cool to see how they go out. How much longer can Verlander hold on? How much longer, or not even can he hold on? How much longer does he want to hold on? Yeah. I mean, because he could probably pitch another 3 or 4 years if he wanted to. But at that point, why? What more do you have to prove? He's won the World Series. He's won MVPs. He's won Cy Youngs. He's been part of successful franchises. I don't know. It'll be interesting for sure.
Well, yeah. What does he have to prove? But also, if you can still do it, why would you not do it? He's throwing 97 miles an hour. Last year wasn't as effective, but I would keep doing it. Kershaw just got his deal with the Dodgers as well. I wouldn't imagine he would have gone anywhere else, but not shocking. Not a pitcher or catcher, but an injury update. I don't know how you get hurt if you haven't even reported to camp. Anthony Rendon has already been ruled out. I think he has a hip injury, significant time missed already. Not sure how that happens. when you're not even in camp. Don't know what he was doing. Um, I'm shocked personally, but what else is new? He may not even play out the rest of this contract. He's 34 years old, can't get on the field. Yeah, you know what? The guy doesn't like to play anyway, so who cares, right?
Is it just an Angels thing, or because Anthony Rendon used to not be like this? Um, Albert Pujols was, I would say, nearing the end of his prime when he joined the Angels,
Yeah.
and he was hurt all the time. Mike Trout, after those first few years, he's hurt all the time. Is it an organization thing? Are they just picking the wrong players? Because I don't, or maybe it's a different philosophy. Because Vladimir Guerrero spent the first part of his career with Montreal, and he played quite a few years with the Angels, but he was never hurt. I don't feel like he was. I feel like he was always on the field. At least he was always hitting. I don't know, man. It's tough because Rendon used to be one of the most exciting players in baseball, like all around. He was so solid and so feared. And that last year at the Nationals, he was ridiculous.
That's how
And
he
a
got the
big
deal.
part of the reason, right, right. But it's like, man, I know you're not. It's all guaranteed money in baseball, but it's like, man, like I would
Yeah.
feel a little bit guilty. Um, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can't speak for organizationally why, but we kind of know with the Angels, and it seems like they're trying to turn over a new leaf. They're adding a lot of players. They just signed Kenley Jansen. They signed Kikuchi. They signed Hendricks, which we kind of know what he is, but he's still a good pitcher or can be.
Right.
But it just seems like an organization that they want to win, but they're not, and they're always hurt. And they have the best. I mean, they have the two best players in baseball for 5 years plus,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't make the playoffs. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you tell me. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, and they used to be a team that was in the playoffs every year. They won.
Yeah.
They won the World Series. They used to be a really solid team, and it's like, yeah, they had after that era, where, I mean, what was the era was like Vlad and Torrey Hunter and all that. After that era, Mike Trout came into the fold, and then they signed Ohtani, and it was like I think they made the playoffs one time. They made the playoffs one time during Trout's the entirety of his career. And then with Ohtani, they never made the playoffs. So
They had more
it's
success.
weird.
They had more success with a different kind of fish. Tim
They
Salmon.
did.
No.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
those early 2000s
Tim.
Angels. Yeah.
Oh man, Tim and Garrett Anderson
Troy
and
Glaus. Yeah.
Troy Gloss, Darren Erstad, David Eckstein. Gosh, man, those were fun teams. And yeah, and even Torrey Hunter, Vlad Guerrero, John Lackey, K-Rod, Jared Weaver, like all these guys were on successful teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's almost like the Rays. Like they built that organization essentially out of young talent, and then again, you just may not always get that kind of success. But it seems like they're willing to spend money. But what are you gonna do? Again,
Right.
It's just not everyone's gonna win every year, and not everybody's the Dodgers.
Right. And sometimes you just run into bad luck with
Yeah.
your superstars. That's just
Yep.
the way it is.
Yep. So poor Anthony Rendon. Other teams making a lot of moves. I mean, we've had a couple of podcasts, but not a lot of opportunity to talk about the offseason moves that have happened because last year we were just waiting on half these guys to sign. We were still at this point of, pitchers and catchers reporting, and guys weren't signing. Most guys have signed. Who do you think has had the best offseason or best couple of off seasons in your opinion?
Right. I mean, obviously the Mets and the Dodgers, who are the anomaly, really. They're not really. They just have the ultra rich owner or ownership group. They're able to go out and sign whoever they need for however much they need. So obviously they have improved and bolstered their roster. I mean, the Dodgers, I would say one of their biggest hurdles last year was lack of healthy starting pitching. They had all the arms. They probably had 5, 6, 7 guys who could start going into the season. And a lot of those guys ended up being hurt down the line. You really only had Yamamoto and then Flaherty, who they picked up at the deadline. But you add Sasaki, you add Blake Snell, you add a couple of really solid relief arms in Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates. You re-signed Teoscar, who had a really nice year for you last year. They signed I think his name is Haesung Kim. I think he's
Yep.
from Japan, I'm pretty sure. They signed Tommy Edman. They signed Michael Conforto. So it's like a lot of these things, they're all areas of need,
Yeah.
and they made a strong bullpen even stronger. So it's hard to argue. Like they just went out and addressed their issues, which weren't many. I mean,
No.
how can you had the best record in baseball, you won the World Series, and they just improved. And then same with the Mets. The Mets did a really nice job. They made some trades, got obviously the best bat on the market in Juan Soto. You re-sign your superstar first baseman to a couple. I would arguably say a bargain for short years in Pete. So
that is the one deal for the Mets. I like what the Mets have done. Getting Pete Alonso for $54 million when he rejected, I believe it was a 7-year, 157, whatever it was. Scott Boras is gonna lose all of his clients. This is like just his inability to read the market, inability to read these teams, and also Pete Alonso's performance the last couple of years. Although he had a great postseason last year, has not been multi-year, hundreds of $1,000,000 worth of first baseman. So I think the Mets bringing him back on the contract that he's on, even though, again, the Mets ownership has shown we don't care about money, we'll just spend it. That is a great deal for them. Essentially, you're just bringing the guy back in the building.
right.
Another team that's kind of hedging their bets, I like the moves they've made, even though you're trading guys like Kyle Tucker and moving on from, it looks like, Bregman, they are kind of hedging their bets by adding Christian Walker and Isaac Paredes, who, again, didn't really work out for the Cubs, but I think they're still trying to work with Bregman. It seems like the door is mostly closed, but they're not sitting out there with nothing, right? They have a third baseman if they go into tomorrow with opening day. They have a formidable roster, and they're not left high and dry. So
Right. And you add, like you were saying, Paredes, who, I mean, he's so young and he has shown flashes of really, really, really great, just being a solid kind of cornerstone type guy, not a superstar, but a guy you can rely on both sides of the baseball. The Cubs, I think, were hoping to get a little bit more out of him. I think he would have been less expendable had he performed a little bit better during his time in Chicago. But they obviously had their eyes on maybe trying to win now with Kyle Tucker. But I think Houston kind of knew, we're not going to sign this guy. He's going to test the open market. Why not try to get some people for him? And you get a nice young controllable piece in Paredes who can play multiple positions. And then you get Cam Smith, who's a first-round draft pick from a year ago, tearing up the minor leagues, could be a very big prospect turned to pro within a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So I agree with that Houston assessment too. And Christian Walker has proven year in, year out that he is one of the best two-way first basemen in the game. And you kind of got him on a bargain as well. $20 million for someone who can do that for 3 years. It's a short-term deal.
Christian Walker is a plus defensive first baseman. And, I mean, he'll probably hit in Houston because Houston's a very hitter-friendly park, and you surround him with a bunch of talent. I agree with Paredes, too. I don't think the Cubs were not interested in retaining him. But how do you pass up on a guy like Kyle Tucker for a year when you want to? Again, they're not saying anything. I think the moves the Cubs have made the last couple of weeks have kind of showed, hey, no, we're not dead in the water. We're still active. But I would say they're more willing to give up prospects and current assets than money at this point, which is interesting.
Right.
You'd think.
But the thing is, the Cubs have a really good mixture of like MLB ready players that aren't as valuable to them, and then guys who are like, these are part of our core. These guys aren't going to go anywhere. These guys are going to be part of our future. Like I put them in two groups, like your Shaw, your Casey, your Triantos. Like I feel like those guys, it would take a really special player with some control in order for the Cubs to part with them. Cade Horton, I'll put him in that category as well.
Yeah.
But then you kind of have your second tier. You have your Alcantara, You have who am I thinking of? Who did they get? There's another outfielder who's a prospect. He's kind of like in between. There, I'm trying to think
Well,
who it is.
here's my thing. Again, you know how I feel about prospects. Um, you only have 3 outfield slots, and a PCA is
Hmm.
your center fielder, and Kyle Tucker's in right field right now, and Ian Happ is apparently immovable. You have nowhere to put these guys.
Right.
So that's great that we have outfield prospects. They are expendable unless you're
Hmm.
literally going to say to your team, hey, no, this is how we're going to build. We're going to be the Brewers, which I understand the Brewers have had a lot of success. The Brewers aren't building World Series winners, though. That's the
No.
difference.
Right.
So you can, scream at like, oh, just look up north. No, we don't want to be that. You got to be better than that. So honestly, if that's what it takes to get another high-profile arm, especially a Dylan Cease or Michael
Hmm.
King from the Padres, if they're willing to move on,
Right.
because we don't really know what the Padres are doing. They have a really good offense, still, even
Yeah.
losing Juan Soto. Um, who knows? But I think one of the biggest areas the Cubs need to focus on is their pitching. So we
Hmm.
can kind of dive into their pitching staff. We're kind of looking at the names here.
Hey,
Um,
before we
oh
do
yeah,
that, I have a couple of teams that I have my eye on too. Like
okay,
those are Dodgers and Mets were kind of obvious. Um, but I mean, yeah, I do like this. I do like this conversation. It was interesting to go through. I wouldn't say go through. I wouldn't even say like be acquainted for the first time, but just kind of go through the moves again, see who
yeah,
did what, see who got traded, see who went where and for how long. Um, I really think that the majority of the AL East really improved drastically.
yeah.
I mean, the Yankees were able to add a frontline starter in Max Fried, who they needed bad. They were able to get Bellinger for essentially nothing, another good lefty bat. Um, Take a flyer on Paul Goldschmidt, see if he's got any magic
Mm-hmm.
left. Trade for Devin Williams. That was really nice. They could kind of replace that whole. I mean, of course, who's the Luke Weaver had a really nice postseason, but I don't think he's going to be your closer. You got Devin in there now, so I think the Yankees made some strides aside from losing out on Soto, him choosing to go elsewhere. But I thought they improved. The Jays were able to add Hoffman to their pen. They were able to add Anthony Santander, who's a really nice move. They were able to trade for Andres Jimenez, I believe, from the Indians, Gold Glove second baseman, and obviously you had Scherzer too. That's a nice move. And then the Red Sox were able to add a bunch of arms, which essentially was their really big issue. I mean, you're able to add Crochet and Sandoval and Bueller. A lot of them have stuff to prove, but at least they're guys who've had success at the big league level before.
I would,
Chapman, Wilson.
yeah, I would argue with the Red Sox. Yeah, they needed pitching. I think they need some bats too. I don't think they're a complete team whatsoever. Um,
Right.
they have a lot of young players, a lot of
Yeah.
who is that at second? Why is their number 57?
Right.
Kind of situations where it's not what we're used to seeing. And maybe they're trying something new. Maybe they see Tampa being successful with this model
Yeah.
and they want to emulate that. But again, you're the Red Sox. You see what
Right.
the Yankees are doing. That's
But
the model.
the Red Sox thing is, I mean, so you have Devers. Devers is a superstar. I mean, he is one of the most feared bats in the game. Tristan Casas is a unbelievable talent as well.
Yeah.
Cedane Rafaela had a really nice year. You did lose one of your better bats in Tyler O'Neill, but like Brandon, they're young guys who are almost ready or will be ready like on opening day. Like I will say they had a trio. They parted with Kyle Teal in
Yeah.
that Crochet trade, but Anthony Roman, remember the name. Marcelo Mayer, remember the name. I mean, these guys, they got this kid from, I think he went to Tennessee or A&M. He's a really good player. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I don't think they're as concerned about the bats as they are the arms. I think they have a lot more talent than you think
Well,
on the offensive end.
again, my problem is what you just said was should be ready or could be ready soon after opening day. That does not scream postseason contender to me. Does it to you? That to me seems like you're 2 to 3 years away.
Right.
So,
I think they're
wow.
closer. I think they're closer than what you think. They finished
Sure.
fourth place in a loaded division, and the other teams I mentioned, aside from the Orioles, which is kind of confusing. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't make more moves, especially when it came to their rotation. But I mean, they're pretty stacked and young, and they
Yep.
got a lot of players
I
too.
mean, but you're in a division with the Yankees, who just went to the World Series, and the Orioles, who we expected to be going further in the playoffs than they have been, but are making the playoffs and are a very formidable regular season opponent. So
Right,
that leaves you automatically in third place. And the Blue Jays just got better.
right.
And the Rays aren't going to be held down. So all of a sudden, because you're waiting on your prospects, and again, if that's the route they want to go, I'm not hip to what the Red Sox procedure is. That is
Right.
not the way they've won 4 World Series in the last 2 decades. It's
Hmm.
not the method they've taken. So it just is a
Right.
little confusing why all of a sudden it's like, this is how we're going to build it. It's like, you just went out and got Crochet. You have some really good arms. Don't waste it. I tell it to Brewers
Right.
fans. You had Woodruff and Corbin Burns for like 3 years, and they were dynamic. And you wasted their arms because you weren't willing to spend more than Christian Yelich. And
Right.
you were riding out Ryan Braun. So,
Yeah. I think they knew that they were not going to be in on the Sotos and the Otanis and all these really big guys. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to trust our young talent. We're going to build, and pitching and defense can get you a really long way. I mean, just look at the Tigers and how they played. So
yeah.
I think they're going to
Yep.
trust the young talent. And again, you go out and you get three arms who have had success before. So
Yeah.
adding that to your rotation with Brian Bayo and Tanner Houck, and you add a couple of good relievers as well. I don't know. I think they'll surprise people a little bit. I think they're going to be a
Yeah.
lot closer to being in contention than you might think looking at their roster right now.
Yeah. Just want a time to be like, I mean, you shouldn't talk about the Boston Red Sox and being a surprise, though. And you
Right.
just compared the Boston Red Sox to the Detroit Tigers, who had no talent. Their most expensive player wasn't even on the roster, Javi Baez, didn't even
Right.
play, right? So they had no business being there. We talk about the Red Sox, they should be there. They should be competing. They should be contending for
Right.
World Series titles, and they haven't done that for almost a decade now, and it's kind of frustrating. But
Right. And it's the same with the Cubs. Like we
yeah,
shouldn't be
oh
talking
yeah,
about the Cubs in that way either, but
agreed,
here we are.
agreed. Again, they're not the White Sox where they're already eliminated from the playoffs, right?
Right.
Their
And then
motto, oh, this is a good one. I know you love talking White Sox. The T-shirt motto that they were kind of making fun of for this year is, "We will win more games." I sure hope so, because if you lose more games, you're going to be the worst team, beating yourself out from last year. I think you
right.
can win more than 28 games, maybe,
Right.
possibly.
For sure.
I don't know.
Maybe DJ Snelton will get them some wins.
Did he sign?
Yeah, with the White Sox, he did.
Really?
He's throwing like triple digits.
Is he 33 now? Wow,
He's 32.
32. Well,
He'd
I
be an interesting one to have on. I'd have DJ on.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, anyone who throws the ball, man. And he's
Right.
still chucking it, yeah.
He's still chucking it.
Well,
Last team
yeah.
who a little bit they didn't make a lot of moves, but I think the moves they made were really strategic. The Diamondbacks.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
89 win team. You add, I think, the best arm in free agency in Corbin Burns, bona fide
Yep.
ace.
Workhorse.
And then you trade, you opt to not sign Walker, but you trade for Josh Naylor, and I do like that a lot
Yep.
too. Adding to all the talent they already have on the offensive end and on the pitching end, hopefully Jordan Montgomery will wake up and pitch a little bit this year.
Full
Hopefully he
spring
returns to
training for him.
form. Full spring training. Hopefully he gets focused. He's going to be battling for another contract as well. He wants to keep pitching, I'm sure, and wants to get
Yep.
paid. So I don't think he's going to make the same mistake again. I think he's going to get off his butt. I think he's going to throw well, and I think he's going to earn the contract, and he'll have to assess the market as well. But it'd be cool to see the Diamondbacks emerge. Obviously, overcoming the Dodgers is a very tough thing.
Yeah.
But I think they're closer than a lot of other teams in that division.
Well, and hopefully
Um,
they also are acquiring Corbin Carroll back from his sophomore slump. Um,
right,
and he becomes a formidable hitter again.
right,
Just has to refine his form for sure.
right.
Yeah, I like Corbin Burns. Anyone who's going to sign him, he's a workhorse. We've seen it. He's really not injury prone. Doesn't seem like it. So, innings eater, will pitch in the postseason. So,
Hmm.
um, now finally on to the Cubs staff that we've been dying to get to, right? Looking at the list, and we can go down it. One thing I notice is there is no ace. There's a couple number twos. You have Shota and Steele, which are good. I think we saw probably the best year you're going to see from Shota Imanaga. I think that's just
Yeah.
realistic. You can't expect him to go out there and do the same thing that he did after last year. Justin Steele's a good pitcher. He is not a one. I don't believe. So
No.
that's going to be the tricky part. I think they have a lot of arms. They have a lot of pieces that can pitch well. Tyone pitched well last year. But after that, Colin Ray, Ben Brown,
Mm-mm.
Wicks, Assad. I mean, you have a lot of arms. You have a lot of options. But they need they need at least one more. I would like to see at least one more starting pitcher arm. Fortunately, we don't have to watch Kyle Hendricks anymore, which that
Hmm.
helps. But yeah, what for at least for the starters, what is your opinion? What move would you like to see?
Yeah. I am in the camp of maybe you don't need a number one if you have like three number twos. Um,
Sure.
I would take three number twos over having an ace and like a traditional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 where there's a clear difference between pitching talent, guys who can dominate a game, guys who can't dominate a game all the time. Uh, Pitching in professional baseball is very, very difficult. I mean, it's very hard to get the edge, both sides of the ball. Um, I really am more in the camp of not giving up prospects for players who you will not have for more than a season. I'm not the hugest fan of that, but if they're really in on winning now, I would be okay with it depending on who the prospects are. Um, the biggest names that we have heard in the last couple of weeks have been the Padres duo, whether it be Dylan Cease or Michael King. I would love to have either one of them. Um, I would take either one of them over like a Jesus Lazardo, who that was a big name that he ended up getting traded to Philly for not much, which was surprising. But the Cease and King, I feel like can work, and they're not going to get hurt, or they don't at least have a history of being hurt a lot. So I would take either one of them. I thought that Jack Flaherty would have been a really good fit, especially seeing the contract that he ended up taking to go back to Detroit. I think it was only a 2-year deal, not a lot of moolah. But yeah, I really do agree with you. I think they definitely need I would say another number two if they're because they can't get there's no ace out there. Um, I would like to see Caesar King to round out the rotation, and then you're not forced to. Colin Ray can kind of be a spot starter, or he could be a long middle reliever, or maybe he doesn't even make the team. I don't know. Um,
Ideally, yeah.
I don't think that Brown, Assad, and I don't Wicks. I don't know if they're going to be rotation type guys. At least not
Yeah.
yet. Um,
If
I don't know.
if and when someone gets hurt, one of these guys might be able to step in. Last year, Ben Brown came out. He was pitching really well. All of a sudden, you need this guy. You have to have this
Yeah,
guy because no one else is pitching well, right? So
and he has electric stuff on top of it.
he does. But you know what? To expect 162, 30 plus starts from either of those three names, I wouldn't expect it. Plus postseason, I wouldn't expect it. You know, it's just not. It's not something you put on your young pitchers. So those three arms are great as a bonus. Colin Ray throwing that bonus pool. You need to rely on those guys for innings. I don't think they're going to deliver it, and it's not going to be at a spectacular rate.
No.
Um,
And I think the only other pitcher who I don't see him being on the major league team this year, just because he really hasn't had enough time to develop in the minor leagues, is Cade Horton. He
yeah,
is maybe a next year candidate, but he just needs to be healthy. He needs to pitch a full healthy minor league
yeah.
season, get his legs, get everything underneath him.
If you see
Got to
Cade
protect
Horton,
that.
if you see Cade Horton, that's either because he's putting up a 1 ERA or because they are severely injured.
Hmm.
And I, he could, but just by statistics, probably not. Um,
Right.
Bullpen is one area I think they've done a really good job the last couple of weeks addressing. Obviously, adding Ryan Presley, who I think he was the closer for the World Series team. He closed all those games, and then they go out and get Josh Hader, and then like, hey, you're going to be the setup man. Well, closers close, right?
Right.
We brought in Hector Neris last year. Hector Neris never closed. Not really a closer. Didn't have great success in the closer role. Saw that with the Cubs too. This guy is a bona fide closer. I
Hmm.
don't know. There's any other way to say it. Ryan Brazier, a casualty of the Dodgers just having too many players.
Right.
He had a sub 2 ERA last year.
He throws really hard. He was a Red Sox for a little
Yeah,
bit. He's got good stuff. He throws very hard.
I didn't love him with the Red Sox because he was a little erratic in that
He
World
was.
Series run. We're like, man, this
Right.
guy's on that. But he has evolved. He's an older pitcher now. Um, I thought those were two pretty solid moves. You kind of see them kind of shuffling the deck with guys they just signed. Like, okay, now they DFA'd this guy again. It's like, okay. So that makes you feel better about those moves because it's like they were just kind of placeholders. Like, we don't want to get stuck with nothing, but we're still constantly trying to evolve and add. I thought those two moves in particular, though, are very positive moves and shows they're willing to keep adding.
Right. And I mean, at the beginning of free agency, too, you had a pitcher like Eli Morgan,
Mm.
who is a very, very good pitcher, had a really nice season in Cleveland. Thielbar as well has had success in the past. Good lefty option.
Yeah.
Has had a string of years where he's been a very dominant
He's,
reliever.
he's
Uh,
39, which I don't
he's
love, but
39, but he'll get you these guys. The biggest thing is that like they've done it. They've
yeah,
done it for a sustained period of time. You're not really having to guess as to what they're capable of. You know what they can do. It's just, are they healthy? Do they feel comfortable? And are they hitting their spots?
yeah. David Robertson would be another name I'd like to kick the tires on potentially.
Right.
Um, but biggest thing with adding those two guys, Presley and Brazier, Porter Hodge is now, I would say, relegated to even a seventh inning role, which I
Right.
think is ideal because he's got
Yeah.
good stuff. Talking to Kyle Stanley about him too. Excited about him, not as a closer though in year two.
Right.
See if he can recreate the success he had. He was a closer last year for a little bit because someone's going to get the closes, right? Someone's going to get those save opportunities. But I think it kind of is slotting some of these other guys in spots where they can be more successful. Julian Merriweather, banged up last year. He could bounce back. Tyson Miller.
Yeah.
You like the guy because he had a good year. Can he replicate that? We don't know.
Right.
But at least it puts these guys in position to succeed where it's not a super high leverage situation every time they're out there. And I think that's
Right.
what's important.
Right. And if these guys are all able to be effective for the most part, and adding Kyle Tucker to this offense is not going to be a bad thing. So you start looking at it, you start seeing how the roster's shaping up. We're obviously going to see near the end of the spring training who's going to make it and who isn't. But uh, them winning 90 games really isn't out of the realm of possibility. I think, especially with these last two moves, like you were saying, like
Yeah.
adding a couple good veteran relievers, that puts me a little bit more at ease. It makes me feel a little bit more comfortable in that they actually did take steps to improve an area of weakness that's
Yeah.
been a weakness for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
They are the best team in the division because the Cardinals aren't doing, I don't know what they're doing. The Pirates are going to pirate. As long as you avoid Paul Skeens, probably going to win 4 of the next 5 games. So, and the Brewers just subtracted this entire offseason, but they continue to just roll out these prospects, and they probably will Brewer again, and will surprise everybody and win more games than expected. But on paper, going forward, the Cubs are the favorite for the division, and they should be. And this is the spot they wanted to be in. Win your division, beat the Brewers, beat the brakes off them. Honestly, they should not really worry about them. And again, unless they surprise. I'm not saying that cocky. I'm just saying that, like, matter of factly, on paper, the talent level, they paid for it. They paid for a better team, so they should perform better. Now, will that come to fruition? It's baseball. Probably not. But, yeah, realistically, they are a better team than the Brewers. It'll just be whether they actually achieve that or not.
Right.
And Pacoda had them at 90.1 wins or something. And usually, again, you fight it every year like, oh, Pacoda doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, they're usually pretty accurate.
They're pretty close.
Believe it or not. So, yeah. All right, well, the meat of this right now, probably the biggest thing that again, different baseball stories catch my attention probably than other people. Rob Manfred addressed this because everyone's screaming about it. Everyone's hollering about it. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? And Rob Manfred just very matter-of-factly, as I would have expected him to, said no. But it was all the other comments around it that he was saying that makes me think he's still aware of what's going on here. And I think the biggest issue, again, the Dodgers can do whatever they want, right? There's no salary cap in baseball. The deferred money is well within the rules, even though I think it's stupid. And in 30 years, they're going to be paying Ohtani and not knowing where the money's coming from. The biggest problem with baseball for me, we'll see if it's the same for you, this is a huge competitive balance issue. When you allow teams like the Dodgers, A, to spend as much money as they want with no restriction other than the luxury tax, which doesn't seem to bother them, and B, defer money at the rate they're deferring it, the competitive balance in baseball is completely washed out. You're not even allowing other teams to essentially bid on these guys. Not that they would pay $700 million, but when there's no restriction, it's a competitive balance issue. You see it in hockey. There's a lot of good hockey teams because there's a really strict cap. You see it in basketball. There's a max that they can give these contracts, right? Oh, we're giving them a max deal. We're doing this. Football, hard cap. Teams have to work money around all the time. I know there's a couple teams that always make Super Bowl, but like for the most part, competitive league. Baseball is really struggling.
Right.
Do you see it the same way, or what's your view?
Yeah, I kind of do feel the same way, and I'm wondering if Rob Manfred was reading these angry fan emails from his the box he was sitting in at the Super Bowl. I think he was sitting next to Adam He's just sitting next to Adam Sandler, and Paul McCartney was down the way a little bit. But yeah, I mean, kudos to Rob for acknowledging that he kind of sees where the fans are coming from. He sees where other owners are coming from. I think his response was he was trying to remain as neutral as he possibly could, because you can't, if you're the commissioner of a major sport, you're not going to be like, they're ruining this game. Like, you can't say that. I think he tap danced around that answer as good as he could have, and he's very, very right in his statement. Like, the Dodgers are not breaking any rules. They're not operating in a way that's different than any other team would if they had the means. But what it comes down to is just like they can spend, and they have the ownership group that has the money that can spend. They have the lucrative TV deal that brings them in extra revenue, and they're able to defer money. They're doing all the things that they can do to put the best product on the field for their fans and for their organization. Like, this is what we all wish our favorite organization would do. And if our organization was doing it, we probably wouldn't have an issue with it. But it's just
a great experience for Dodger fans.
Right. Yeah. And good for them. But What blows my mind is that every other sport you do have a cap, and you have to operate in a certain window and a certain framework. And when all you have to do is pay more money, it's kind of like these big corporations, right? You're allowed to pollute, and you can buy carbon credits, and that offsets you're still polluting, just because you can spend your way out of it. Like you're still polluting. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing. Like the Dodgers are spending money, and they just pay the fine. That's all they do.
Yeah.
It's worth it to them to just pay the fine.
Really, the only hindrance on them right now is that they can only have 26 men on their roster, and they can
Right.
only have 40 men on their active roster. So, like, that's the only thing holding them back. Other than
Right.
that, they can spend as much as they want. They have
Right.
this immense pool of prospects, which is crazy because they don't even use any of them. They're all trade capital. You have
Right.
Mookie Betts in right field. Again, we know a couple people that were in the Dodgers organization. They're not going to play for the
No.
Dodgers. There's no chance. You're not, Miguel Vargas got traded to the White Sox last year. He was never going to play shortstop for them,
No.
but like he's just a trade chip. I think there is ways because I think the salary cap's going to be hard. That's going to be a hard issue to push. Players want more money. There's no way they're going to agree to a cap.
No. Or less money. I mean,
Sure.
that's the other thing. I read I think it was on Forbes. It was about this whole thing. Like I read a few of the Manfred, few of the news outlets writing about the Manfred statements. And the one I was looking at, in Forbes, I might have been looking at the CBA stuff as well, which I wish I was more knowledgeable about the business part of baseball. But they were just talking about like this new CBA deal. It's not going to be or it's not going to be a thing until December of 2026. So we still have to go through another couple seasons before this is even a thing. But it's like there's so much that goes into it, and it's like the Mets and Dodgers have created this environment where they're going to throw however much money they need to at some of these more important players, like your Otanis and your Sotos, and like people are using that as a benchmark for what I can get. What can this next guy get? What is Kyle Tucker going to get?
Right.
What is Bobby Witt going to? Bobby Witt signed his bigger deal, but it's like, what is this guy going to get? And what is that guy going to get? And it's just going to go more and more. Are we going to see an $100 million a year player in our lifetime? Maybe.
It's possible. But I think what happens is if you establish any sort of cap, what it does is it brings other teams into play that wouldn't normally be in play.
Right.
What do we see in hockey sometimes? We see some of the best players go to some of the worst teams because they can offer them the most money, right?
Right.
Even though, they would, okay, do I want to win or do I want the money? Well,
Right.
it's a business for them too. I would take the money too.
Right. Or you see a star who's maybe on an expiring contract
Yeah.
take a veteran minimum type thing to play for a contender.
Yeah.
I mean, you see like we saw Jerome McGinley playing for Boston down the stretch a few years ago, because he wanted to win a cup and he wanted a chance to win a cup. So it's like, I don't know, you can do things to level it out. And the thing is, it's like all these contracts, they're more money, regardless of how much you get taxed, because they probably really get half of it, but still,
Right.
half of $20 million is $10 million. And that's more than enough for anyone to live on.
We
but
can't comprehend what that is.
but it's like there's got to be some kind of like revenue sharing or something. There's got to be some kind of incentive. Like you said, players are never going to agree to take less money. And of course, they're going to have to take less money if they're all going to operate within the salary cap. But I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there are ways without the salary cap, though, for them to still accomplish some sort of, I don't want to say penalty, because it's not like the Dodgers. Again, I don't like them because I don't like the Dodgers and because I'm not a Dodgers fan. So for me, yeah, they're kind of ruining baseball because they're spending all this money that my team doesn't want to spend. But what you can do is, even within this, is change the rules. Okay, you can't defer money. You have to do it within the time the player is playing baseball. If they retire early, that's different. That can be deferred, blah, blah, blah. You got to penalize them in international draft pools. You got to penalize them in the regular draft. take away some of their draft picks. Don't just have it be luxury tax money. No,
Right.
hurt them with their farm system. Hurt them with the players coming up through your organization. If you want to win now and you want to spend $1.5 billion on your first 3 hitters of your lineup, it's going to cost you down there. And you're sacrificing the future for present day.
The present.
But right now, there's really, again, other than money, which the Dodgers are printing it, that other teams aren't printing. And again, we're hearing from the Cubs, Marquee's not as profitable. Well, this is the reality of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's ways without a cap to still hinder teams from just going rogue and crazy and having this successful, again, minor league organization you don't even use and major league organization that just buys.
Right.
All that to say, I think we are headed towards a work stoppage at the end of 2026. I think
100%. 100%. That is unavoidable.
Yep.
There's going to be. It'll probably be one of the more major strikes that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
In a professional sport.
And I would say,
and it's like, how did we get here?
It might be worth it. I don't wish it on anyone, but it might be worth it to skip a season or skip part of a season to get it right and get competitive balance back in the game. Because right now, there's maybe 6 teams that are competing for World Series, not 32.
Mm-hmm.
It should be most of your teams are competing, and adding an extra wild card spot isn't enticing enough for teams like Pittsburgh, who has a salary cap of $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Rays build their organization a certain way, but like nothing. The Athletics, I think their salary cap is like $60 million. Like, it's a joke. It is a joke when you have one team spending almost $500 million and one team spending less than 30, 40,
right.
50. You can't have that.
So I was looking at the Dodgers for the 2025 season. I think their payroll was like $303 million. Like, that's
sure.
what they're on the books in 25. I wonder if that's like figuring Ohtani making $7 million. You think that's what it is?
2.
Is it 2?
He has deferred $68 million a year. So, okay, just round that up, because, I mean, he's not the only person deferring on the Dodgers. If you put in his full 70, the Dodgers are over $400 million.
Right.
So then I think their deferred contracts for starting in whatever year is over $100 million already.
Right.
So and you haven't even played that baseball season yet. So
right.
You just have to correct some of these smaller issues, and I think the bigger one is gonna lead to the work stoppage. It's kind of inevitable. I think we're both right there on it.
Right.
But
hopefully not. I hope they can figure something out. But yeah, the biggest thing is that like owners are crying poor, and players want more, think they're worth more money, and it's just not a good. I just go back to it. I wish I knew someone who was like really knowledgeable about the business side. Like, how did we get here? How is this? Why is this happening?
I mean, the NFL is the NFL. They are so healthy right now. What is their biggest asset? No work stoppages and that salary cap.
Yeah.
The owners are making money hand over fist, and they, whatever. The players are making money hand over fist because it's a healthy structure. Again, the owners are always going to make more money. They're owners, They're billionaires. Paying the millionaires.
But the biggest thing with that is that you got guys who feel undervalued. Like Saquon Barkley, how much did he make this? Like, these guys get franchise tagged, and they're not making as much as they could. They're getting a lot more money off of like their advertising dollars and their marketing and all that stuff. Like, I feel like, the NFL, are they the most healthy league? Yes, but do their players get as much as they're worth? Probably not.
No,
do they make enough?
Do
they make enough? Do they make enough to live their lives? Of course they do. But they are. Yeah, I just think a lot of those guys get the shaft. Like it's only been recently where the guaranteed money is going up. Like Patrick Mahomes, and then it was Lamar Jackson, and that was the next guy, and the next guy. It's like they're all like Joe Burrow and all these players. Like, they're finally like, hey, I get the big contract, and then most of it's guaranteed or fully guaranteed. Like, baseball has always been fully guaranteed, at least that I can, as far as I can remember. So people use baseball as like the measuring stick. It's like, well, that's probably the most unhealthy league that we've had, the most unhealthy
Well,
sports league. They've had more strikes than anybody.
yeah, but they're so close to figuring it out. So if you can get the rule changes have been great. Pitch
Yep.
clock's been great. We're gonna have the automatic strike zone for spring training. We're one step away from having
Right.
a good game, a fast game, and then
Yep.
hopefully soon a level playing field. And then you're there.
Right.
Then you're
And
there.
if I'm not saying it's completely on Rob Manfred, because he obviously, there's other people who are in his corner and people who he has conversations with. If he is able to figure this out, if he's able to figure this part of the business out, this part of the game out, is he the best commissioner ever?
I would. I mean, you boo the guy because it's like, oh, most time you don't like commissioners. If he can get this done before his tenures, and I think he already said he doesn't want to do another contract, like this is his last contract, so we'll have a new baseball commissioner. If he can accomplish all this, where he's taken the game, I originally when he first came in, I would have said no. There's no chance
Right.
he could possibly do this.
Right.
Maybe.
But I feel like everything that he has done or implemented has really worked out well. And baseball has been in like a 9 or 10 year decline when it comes to attendance and viewership and all that stuff. But I feel like it's slowly starting to make its way back around and kind of catch up with our fast paced, like, need it now
Let's
culture.
let's preface this fully, and I think you would agree. If Rob Manfred can restructure the CBA before December 26th and avoid a lockout, then yes, he is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's
Yeah.
any question. Bud Selig did a lot of things for the game, not the best commissioner. If Rob Manfred can instill all these rule changes, get the automatic strike zone, get the umpires out of the chair position of running the game, and avoid a lockout, I would agree.
Yep.
I mean, if he has a framework for it, there's not much competition for him anyways as commissioner of
Right.
baseball. But yeah, I would say if he can avoid the lockout, unquestionably,
Yep. Absolutely.
and maybe save the game of
Agreed.
baseball, who knows? But
Right.
mhm.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right, well, exciting stuff. By the next time we talk, there will have been probably actual spring training games, which is exciting. So looking forward to get into more of that, and hopefully no more injuries to report. Fingers crossed. Hopefully we
Yeah.
have a healthy Dansby Swanson, Eagle Horner working back. So all good stuff. Yeah, until next time, Boots come in pairs. Take it easy.
Peace.